Russia is a manageable threat that you can negotiate with. China is no longer the main danger. The issue of Russia's war against Ukraine should be resolved by Europe, and the United States is no longer obligated to help its allies ensure their security. This is a brief summary of the new United States national security strategy that Trump presented the day before. So, the Pentagon published a new United States national defense strategy the day before, in which it changed its priorities and called on American allies to take care of their own security independently, and confirmed that the administration of the current president, Donald Trump, is focusing on dominance in the Western Hemisphere. But the most important thing for us is the statement that the document emphasizes that it is the European allies who should play a leading role in supporting Ukraine's defense. And the document's final quote: "For too long, the allies have allowed the United States to effectively subsidize their defense, while the benefits went to political elites and the costs were borne by ordinary Americans." Overall, the United States national defense document appears extremely politicized, but it shows Donald Trump's complete departure from the old traditions of the Euro-Atlantic alliance as a whole. The national defense document is extremely politicized, but it shows Donald Trump's complete departure from the traditions of the Euro-Atlantic alliance. Overall, the United States national defense document is extremely politicized, but it shows Donald Trump's complete departure from the old Euro-Atlantic alliance. Overall, the United States national defense document is extremely politicized. Trump, the old foundations in the Euro-Atlantic alliance, overall national defense. It clearly shows Donald Trump's complete reversal of the old foundations in the Euro-Atlantic alliance. Overall, the national defense document is extremely politicized, but it shows Donald Trump's complete reversal of the foundations in the Euro-Atlantic alliance as a whole, and the United States national defense is extremely politicized. But it shows Donald Trump's complete reversal of the old foundations in the Euro-Atlantic alliance. The defense is extremely complete. Donald Trump's reversal of the old foundations in the Euro-Atlantic alliance as a whole. The national defense is extremely politicized by Donald Trump from the old foundations in the Euro-Atlantic alliance. But the United States national defense strategy states the following quote: And although Europe remains important, its share of global economic power is smaller and continues to decrease. It follows that, although we are and remain committed to Europe, we must and will prioritize the defense of United States territory and the deterrence of China. The United States is also calling for increased burden sharing with allies and partners. The Western Hemisphere gets even more interesting. The strategy calls for helping partners in America's backyard, while at the same time warning these same partners that the United States, quote, will actively and fearlessly defend America's interests throughout the Western Hemisphere. Once again, the United States is saying that Europe is already economically weak, its global economic power is declining, so Europe should handle things on its own. But if America needs help in the Western Hemisphere, then that same Europe should come to its aid because America once helped them. The document specifically mentions access to the Panama Canal and Greenland, after Trump stated that he had reached a framework agreement on security in the Arctic with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. Earlier, Trump expressed the opinion that the United States should consider regaining control over the Panama Canal contract and accused Panama of having given up influence over something important. And this week, when asked whether the possibility of regaining control over the canal was still being considered, Trump said, "I don't want to tell you that." I would say yes, it is still being considered as part of the defense strategy. The Pentagon also expressed approval of the operation that resulted in the capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro earlier this month, stating that all narco-terrorists should take note of this. But when it comes to China, the United States has completely turned its own national security strategy upside down. The Pentagon's new defense document views China, which Joe Biden's administration considered the main adversary, as a stabilizing force in the Indo-Pacific region, which only needs to be contained from dominating the United States or its allies. Next, I'll quote from the United States National Defense Strategy. The United States' goal is not to dominate China, nor to suppress or humiliate it. This does not require regime change or any other kind of existential struggle. President Trump seeks a stable world, fair trade, and a relationship with China based on mutual respect. The United States plans to expand the range of military communications with the Chinese army, and that was a shock. Because at the same time, the strategy does not mention or give any guarantees to Taiwan, which Beijing considers its territory, and does not rule out the possibility of using force to gain control over the island. Let me remind you, United States law requires military support for Taiwan, but the National Defense Strategy doesn't mention Taiwan, even though they're willing to communicate with the Chinese army. In the defense strategy of Joe Biden's administration, it was stated that the United States would support Taiwan's self-defense, but now there is not a word about it, and China is no longer a threat or an adversary. But there is another example of shifting responsibility for regional security onto allies, and that is the issue of the threat from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, North Korea. Another quote from the Pentagon's strategy: South Korea is capable of taking on the main responsibility for deterring North Korea, with critical but more limited support from the United States regarding the Middle East. The document states that Iran remains a key threat and appears intent on rebuilding its conventional armed forces and may once again attempt to develop nuclear weapons. Calling Israel a model ally, the Pentagon said that United States allies and partners in the Middle East should take on most of the defense efforts. Washington may take targeted and decisive actions in this region. I would like to note that the publication of the new defense strategy marked the end of a week of hostility between the Trump administration and traditional United States allies, particularly Europe, when the head of the White House threatened some European partners with tariffs to pressure them into gaining control over Greenland. Although he later announced a deal that eased tensions as allies face what some consider to be hostile United States positions. They will almost certainly be dissatisfied that the American Department of War, led by Pete Hegseth, will provide, quote, reliable options to guarantee United States military and commercial access to key territories, especially Greenland and the Panama Canal. That is, this is already written into the strategy, and here there was even a threatening warning to Canada, the closest neighbor of the United States. The new United States defense strategy urges cooperation with Canada and other neighbors, but also issues a strict warning. We will work in good faith with our neighbors, from Canada to our partners in Central and South America, but we will ensure that they respect and fulfill their part of the work to protect our common interests. And if they don't, we will be ready to take targeted, decisive actions that specifically advance the interests of the United States overall. It should be said that this document reinforces Donald Trump's philosophy called America First, which supports non-interference in foreign affairs, questions decades of strategic relationships, and gives priority specifically to the interests of the United States. This is sometimes called isolationism, but I dislike that term because it makes the issue seem too global. In reality, the United States won't leave NATO, fully withdraw from Europe, or exit the Indo-Pacific region. In short, it's just a reformatting. Yes, it's obvious that the Americans will reduce their level of involvement in the security of their partners, but they are not planning to leave completely. On the other hand, it should be reminded that the latest United States National Defense Strategy was published in 2022 during the presidency of Joe Biden and focused on China as the greatest challenge for America. After Russia left, it's clear America maintained the strongest alliances with its partners. They didn't say, "You're on your own, we'll help if anything happens, but please handle it yourselves." No, but now obviously the priorities have changed. I'll leave it at that. Friends, share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation or paid subscription using the links and details provided. In the description of this video it says support the channel Alexi Peci. Choose any format that's convenient for you. Thank you for any support. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye everyone.